The boarding announcement echoed through Terminal C for the third time, but Marcus Chen didn't move. He sat motionless in the empty gate area, staring at his phone screen without seeing it, the weight of the past 48 hours pressing down on his chest like a physical thing. Around him, Christmas decorations twinkled with an almost mocking cheerfulness, silver garland catching the fluorescent lights, a towering tree in the distance covered in red and gold ornaments. It was Christmas Eve, and he had nowhere to go. His company had collapsed. 20 years of building, of sacrificing everything, his marriage, his relationship with his sister, countless friendships, all gone in a catastrophic acquisition that had turned hostile at the last moment. The board had voted him out that morning. His own board, people he'd handpicked, mentored, trusted. The betrayal burned worse than the failure itself. At 42 years old, Marcus Chen was successful, wealthy, and utterly alone. The flight to Singapore he'd booked on impulse represented nothing more than running away, though he couldn't articulate what he was running from or toward. He was contemplating ordering another overpriced airport whiskey when he felt a small hand tap his knee. "Excuse me, mister." Marcus looked down into the face of a little boy, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, with enormous brown eyes and cheeks still round with childhood. The kid wore a rumpled Iron Man t-shirt and jeans with a hole in one knee. His dark hair stuck up in the back like he'd been sleeping against something. Behind him stood a girl who couldn't have been more than 19 or 20, wearing a Target employee vest over a thin sweater, her face pale with exhaustion and worry. "I'm sorry," the young woman started, reaching for the boy, but he stepped closer to Marcus instead. "Are you going to Chicago?" the boy asked with the earnest directness only children possess. Marcus blinked, surprised. What, Chicago? Are you going there? My sister says we might not get home because the flights are all full and we don't have enough money for the expensive tickets and we've been here for 2 days and I really want to go home." The words tumbled out in a rush, and Marcus noticed the shimmer of tears in those big eyes. "My daddy is in heaven, and my mommy is in the hospital, and Emily says we have to get home to see her but," his small voice cracked. "Can you help us get home?" The raw desperation in that child's plea cut through Marcus's self-imposed numbness like a knife. He looked up at the sister, Emily, who had turned scarlet with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly, trying to take her brother's hand. "Come on, Maddie, we can't bother people, I told you." "Wait," Marcus heard himself say. He studied them more carefully now. The girl had dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and crushing worry. Her brother's clothes were clean but worn, and both of them had the hollow look of people who'd been eating nothing but vending machine food. A small backpack sat at Emily's feet, bulging with what he assumed was everything they'd brought. "What happened?" Emily hesitated, pride and desperation warring across her young face. Finally, desperation won. "Our mom had a stroke 3 days ago. We're from Chicago, but I go to community college in Phoenix, and Maddie lives with me because..." She swallowed hard. "Our dad died 8 months ago. Heart attack. Mom couldn't afford to keep the house in Chicago, so she moved in with her sister there. But Maddie was doing so badly that the counselor suggested he stay with me for a semester, try to stabilize. I work at Target, I'm taking classes, and I thought I could handle it." Her voice wavered. Then Mom's sister called and said Mom collapsed. They did emergency surgery, but she's not, they don't know if she'll. She couldn't finish. Maddie moved closer to her, wrapping his small arms around her leg. "We got the last 2 seats on a flight yesterday," Emily continued, wiping her eyes roughly with the back of her hand. "But there was a mechanical issue, and they canceled it. Then the storm hit the Midwest, and everything got backed up. Every flight to Chicago is completely booked, and the only seats available are first class at $800 each. I have $400 total. That's supposed to last us until my next paycheck and cover food and..." She stopped, clearly mortified at revealing so much to a stranger. "I'm sorry, you don't need to hear all this. Come on, Maddie." But Maddie didn't move. He looked up at Marcus with those enormous, pleading eyes. "My teacher says that sometimes angels look like regular people. Are you an angel, mister?" Something inside Marcus's chest cracked open. Here he'd been, drowning in self-pity over losing a company, over professional betrayal, over manufactured problems that meant nothing in the face of what these 2 kids were dealing with. This little boy had lost his father, might lose his mother, and was stranded far from home with a sister barely out of her teens who was trying to hold everything together with sheer willpower and $400. "What time do you need to be in Chicago?" Marcus asked. Emily blinked at him, confused by the question. As soon as possible. The doctors said we should come now if we want to say goodbye. But all the flights are full. We've been on standby for everything, but with the holiday. She trailed off hopelessly. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his airline app. He traveled constantly, or had traveled constantly, for business, and had accumulated status that bordered on absurd. He'd been planning to use his miles to fly first class to Singapore, his small consolation prize for a spectacularly terrible week. He looked at the app, then at Emily and Maddie's hopeful faces, then back at his phone. The 7:15 flight to O'Hare, he said slowly. 2 seats in first class. That's the one, but like I said, we can't afford. I'm not asking you to afford it. Marcus stood up and grabbed his carry-on. Come with me. What? No, we couldn't possibly. Your mother might be dying, Marcus said bluntly, then softened his tone when Maddie made a small, wounded sound. Sorry, kid, but your sister needs to get you home, and I can help. So let's go help. The next 40 minutes were a blur of counter visits, status confirmations, and increasingly bewildered airline representatives. Marcus used his miles to upgrade Emily and Maddie to first class on the 7:15 flight to Chicago. He used more miles to change his own ticket from Singapore to Chicago. He ignored Emily's protests, her tears, her insistence that she couldn't accept this. You're not accepting anything, he told her firmly as they headed through security. I'm doing this because your brother asked if I was an angel, and I'm definitely not, but maybe I can do one decent thing this week. Maddie held Marcus's hand as they walked through the terminal, chattering now about his mom, his school, his dead father who he missed, like crazy. The kid had apparently decided Marcus was safe, and the trust implicit in that small hand wrapped around his fingers made Marcus's throat tight. At the gate, Emily finally broke down completely. I don't understand why you're doing this. You don't even know us. Marcus watched Maddie, who had fallen asleep in one of the chairs, his head pillowed on the small backpack. 2 days ago, I lost my company. The business I built from nothing, that I poured everything into for 2 decades. This morning, I was sitting in that terminal thinking I'd lost everything that mattered. He turned to look at Emily. Your brother just taught me that I've never actually had a clue what real loss looks like. Or real courage. You're 20 years old, raising your little brother, working and going to school, and dealing with disasters that would flatten most people. And you're still standing. So maybe I'm not doing this for you. Maybe I'm doing it because I needed to remember what actually matters. Emily wiped her eyes. You're a good person. No, Marcus said quietly. I'm really not. I've been a selfish, ambitious, tunnel-visioned workaholic who sacrificed every relationship I had for success. But maybe it's not too late to be better. The flight to Chicago was quiet. Maddie slept against Emily's shoulder while she dozed fitfully. Marcus sat across the aisle, watching them and thinking about all the Christmas Eves he'd worked through, all the family dinners he'd skipped, all the moments he'd sacrificed in pursuit of the next milestone, the next achievement, the next victory. His ex-wife had begged him to slow down, to be present, to care about something other than the company. He'd told her she didn't understand his vision. In reality, he'd been the one who didn't understand. Success without connection was just expensive loneliness. When they landed at O'Hare, Marcus didn't just say goodbye. He arranged a car service to take them to the hospital, over Emily's increasingly tear-soaked protests. He got Maddie a stuffed bear from one of the airport shops because the kid mentioned he'd left his favorite toy in Phoenix. And he took Emily's number, making her promise to text him updates about their mother. Why? Emily asked one final time as they stood outside the terminal in the freezing Chicago night. Why would you do all this for strangers? Marcus crouched down to Maddie's level. You asked if I was an angel, buddy. I'm not, but you know what? You and your sister reminded me that maybe the point isn't being an angel. Maybe it's just showing up when someone needs help. Being kind when you have the chance. Caring about people's stories instead of just your own. Are you going to be alone for Christmas? Maddie asked with a child's devastating perceptiveness. Marcus nodded. Yeah, kiddo, I am. That's sad. Maddie hugged him suddenly, fiercely, his small arms barely reaching around Marcus's chest. Thank you for being our angel even if you're not a real one. Marcus watched their car pull away, then stood in the snow for a long moment. His phone buzzed. A message from his former executive assistant. Heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? For the first time in days, Marcus smiled. He wasn't okay, not by a long shot. His company was gone, his professional reputation was in tatters, and he'd have to rebuild everything from scratch. But standing in the snow on Christmas Eve, having just helped 2 kids get home to their dying mother, he felt more human than he had in years. He texted back, "Getting there. And I think I know where to start." Then he called his sister, whom he hadn't spoken to in 3 years after a fight about his priorities. She answered on the 3rd ring, suspicious and wary. "Sarah," he said, "I know I've been a terrible brother. I know I missed Thanksgiving, and I forgot your birthday, and I wasn't there when you got divorced. I know I chose work over you 1,000 times, and I'm sorry. I'm in Chicago, and I'm alone, and I was wondering if maybe I could come see you and the kids tomorrow. For Christmas." The silence stretched so long he thought she'd hung up. Then, "Marcus, are you okay? You sound different. I met this little boy at the airport," Marcus said, watching the snow fall. "In the terminal lights, he asked if I was an angel. And I realized I've been so busy trying to be successful that I forgot to be a decent human being. I want to be better, Sarah. And I'd like to start by being a better brother." His sister's voice cracked. "We live in Arlington Heights. It's about an hour from the city. The guest room is always ready because I kept hoping. God, Marcus, yes, please come. The kids would love to see their uncle." As Marcus climbed into a taxi, his phone buzzed again. A text from Emily. "We're at the hospital. Mom's awake. Doctors say she's going to make it. They said another day might have been too late. You saved us in more ways than one. Merry Christmas, Angel." Marcus read the message 3 times, something warm and painful and beautiful expanding in his chest. He'd lost a company. He'd had his life's work ripped away. And yet, sitting in that taxi heading toward a sister he hadn't seen in years, knowing that Emily and Maddie were with their mother, he felt richer than he'd ever felt while sitting in his corner office commanding his empire. His driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "You okay back there, sir? You're smiling." "Yeah," Marcus said, surprised to find it was true. "For the first time in a long time, I really am." The taxi pulled away from O'Hare into the snowy Chicago night, carrying Marcus toward a Christmas he hadn't planned and a future he couldn't predict. But for once, the uncertainty didn't terrify him. Because somewhere in that airport terminal, a little boy had asked a simple question that changed everything: "Can you help us get home?" And in helping them find their way home, Marcus had finally found his own.